thank you for coming today. My name is Cynthia George, and I am a professor of social work at Tennessee State University in Nashville, Tennessee. And I'm also the chair for Disabled to the Front, which is a group that I started working with Nashville's night mayor to promote disabled people's access to nightlife, and that is what I'm here to talk to you about today. Some of our learning objectives are to understand what dignity of risk means, and I want to describe the Disabled to the Front project, and then we're going to close with some things that you can do in your community to help promote disabled people's access to nightlife. So first, what is dignity of risk? And it's the basic tenet is that taking reasonable risks is essential to learning, and it's part of being autonomous, right? And people with disabilities deserve to be able to take those risks. And it grows out of self-determination, and it requires informed choice, and it requires caregivers and environmental managers create an environment that supports people with disabilities to make their own choices and to be autonomous. And so nightlife is unique, right? It's any public activity where people are going out at night. It's generally socialization and recreation. Not much is known. It's not really studied by academics. There are a lot of community groups that are beginning to plan events for people with disabilities, and it's just important to ensure that authentic engagement with public life. Now, I am working in Nashville, Tennessee, which is an it city, right? It is a music city. It has a very vibrant nightlife scene. And we also have a lot of demographic and political shifts. There's a lot of development, so there's a lot of loose gravel everywhere, there's cranes everywhere, there's a lot of growth, and people with disabilities can get ignored, right, when those sorts of things are happening. We also did not expand Medicaid in our state, and so people with disabilities are struggling to meet their daily needs, and housing, employment, healthcare. However, they still want to party, right? Because that is critical, it makes everything worth it. What we're talking about here are Title III establishments under the Americans with Disabilities Act, and this includes all of the venues that you would go to in public spaces like restaurants, bars, bowling alleys, that sort of stuff. And they all should have some sort of a reasonable accommodation plan in place, but they don't necessarily always do. And then sometimes accommodations are a bit of an illusion, where the people managing the environment may think that they have everything in place, but then when a person with disabilities comes in to actually use those services, they don't work, they haven't been checked in years, or they're just out of date, right? And so the person managing the environment may think that's a rarity or it doesn't happen very often, but the person with disabilities knows that that happens almost every day. Everywhere we go, the accommodations fail, right? Especially in nightlife. Now, some of the issues that people in nightlife are dealing with, we're talking about transportation, we're talking about parking, we're talking about sidewalks, right, and actually getting to the venues. We're talking about a lack of harm reduction skills in the people with disabilities themselves. They've not necessarily been trained to protect themselves in a bar. The people that work in those establishments have not necessarily been trained on how to support a person with disabilities or how to engage with someone that's blind or uses a wheelchair. There's a lot of stigma and misplaced concern. There's also caregiver control, whether conscious or subconscious. Caregivers can intend to protect the person with disabilities, but they're actually putting limits around their ability to gain independence and create those social connections that make life worth living, right? There's also financial costs, right? It's expensive to go out, and there's a lot of stress and anxiety over spending the money to get an Uber or to, going out is like an unnecessary expense. And when you're on a fixed income, anytime you're spending money on an unnecessary expense, there's like stress and anxiety. And then fear of humiliation, right? What happens if I'm in this bar and, I have a seizure, or I can't get the accommodations, or I'm kicked out, or they take my mobility device away from me, or they break it, right, or I'm stuck somewhere. And so there's a lot of fear. Problems specific to the nightlife venues, right? Those are really about communication, right? And venues are often, especially in Nashville, we have a lot of small venues, and they don't have a large staff, and so they will not even have a contact information on their website. Maybe no one there has really been trained on how to plan for accommodations. And then some of the larger venues have the opposite problem, where they might have so much staff that even though the ADA coordinator has worked out your accommodations, they don't get communicated to the staff that are on the floor, who will then undermine your accommodations, right? And so there's problems in both small and large venues. And then there's all the physical things, like the width of doorways, or the walkways, and are the tables in the way. People will put trash cans in the middle of a perfectly good walkway, right, or a bathroom entrance, and broken elevators or lifts, right? There's bathroom accessibility issues. Sometimes the bar is so high that someone in a wheelchair could not go up and order a drink on their own. So there's a lot of problems, right? And the main problem is that when you go see a show, right? I'm a musician, I also sing in a band, and I have been growing up going to shows. And then as my disabilities came on, I was less and less able to do that, and I started having more and more problems being there. And people with disabilities are often sat in the back of the room. If we're lucky, we get to be along the side, right? But you never get to be front and center, and that bothered me. And so I'm a riot girl. If anybody remembers that movement from the 90s, right? We had a saying of girls to the front, and this was at a time when women were just taking their place fronting bands on the stage, and they were demanding access to be in music venues. They were dealing with mosh pits, physical assault, sexual assault, and so the Girls to the Front movement sought to change that. And so I created Disabled to the Front, right? We've got a fancy little logo, and we are partnered with Nashville's Night Mayor, and cities all over the world actually that have a significant nightlife scene have created offices of nightlife to manage that and to liaison between the businesses and the residents. And so I am using my band credibility and my social work knowledge to work through the nightmare to liaison to help solve this problem. Some of the things that we have done, we had a launch party, right? That's my band performing there in the picture. And that was well attended. We had about 140 people that came to that, raised some money. And I got some press articles and recruited some advisory board members. And so we do have monthly meetings now. Since I believe our first one was in March, we're having a monthly business meeting in Zoom. We also have a monthly social mixer at some sort of a venue out in town, and our group is building. We partnered with the National Federation of the Blind, and we organized some iPhone skills training to help people navigate those environments late at night. And then anytime we provide a skills training, we also have a nightlife aspect to it, and so we go and party afterwards, right? And we also were invited by 5th and Broadway, which is one of the largest venues in our downtown tourist zone in Nashville, and they invited us to come and tour their facility, give them feedback on ways to improve accessibility, and they've taken a lot of our advice. We're working with a company called Navi Lens that provides advanced digital signage to the blind. It's also very beneficial to neurodivergent people and people that don't speak English as their first language, because it provides audio descriptions to everything that's going on. We party on Broadway, right? We go to rooftop bars, and we help everywhere we go. We talk about the accessibility issues, and we build relationships with the owners and the management, and work to improve that pathway. We're also working with the Nashville Zoo, which is already one of the most accessible places in our city. If you ever come to Nashville, definitely want to visit the zoo. They're very kind to the animals and to the people. And they are going to implement Navi Lens, and they have like a nightlife night, right? Like where people can go and have some drinks and cocktails and wander the zoo. We also got City Council to pass a resolution to encourage the city to conduct a citywide ADA audit, right? And if anybody wants to geek out, you're welcome to reach out to me and we will talk about the details of that. But I would love for other cities to pass similar resolutions. And it strengthens the power behind the ADA, and it sends a message to the business owners and to the residents that the ADA is valued and important in that city. And so it's part of the culture change that we're seeking. I also wrote a new song, right? I made a music video. It's called Be the Teeth. You can check that out on YouTube or graduatesrise.com. You can link out to all of our pages. And they're playing this song all the way in Australia, right? It's being played on radio stations around the world. And the song is about enforcing the ADA. And we have to be the teeth of that law because there's not a lot of teeth in it. And if we don't do it, no one will. And I did a press blitz, right? A lot of reporters love to get quotes from the professor with the mohawk, right? And so I'll take advantage of that every chance I get, and we'll agree to podcast interviews and press blitz and anything that I can do to get the story out. And again, it's that culture change that we're working on right now, and making people with disabilities feel welcome and wanted in coming out, right? Because it's easy to become reclusive when it's so difficult to leave your house and you've got that fear, and so we're working to counteract that as much as we can. We did have Dark Matter to be the first place to host Navi Lens Codes. That is a local female-owned venue in Nashville, an independent venue. I love them. They created a whole ADA section for their Dark Matter Fest, and we appreciate them very much. And there is one of our events, right, where we all get together and kind of celebrate our successes, because that's important. The work that we're doing is hard, and sometimes it can be very challenging to stand up to a manager and say, you treated me wrong, right? It's so much easier to just retreat and go home and cry about it, and but we have to stand up and be the teeth and let them know, you hurt me, you caused me harm, and you need to do it right, you need to make it right, and you need to make sure this doesn't happen to others. And that's what Disabled at the Front is about. We are also serving on community boards, and we're speaking out on these issues. Our Nashville Department of Transportation has officially used us to provide feedback on a new street that they're creating. We're developing mini zines, if anybody remembers zines. We're developing those to communicate information to service workers. And we're planning, the Nightmares are going to have a conference in Nashville where they come in from all over the world, and we're going to provide the very first session to those Nightmares on promoting disabled people's access to nightlife. And then we just party, right? That's what we do in between all of that work. Now, some of the things that you can do, the first and foremost, encourage your venue owners to make sure they have an ADA contact on their website and make sure that somebody is answering it and responding to it. There is a self-assessment that is put out by the ADA Center, where you're wanting those venues to look at the approach and entrance, the access to the goods and services, the bathrooms, and then any additional access issues. And then there's also a 4-hour at-your-service webinar that employees can take that go through the basics of disability etiquette. You can also encourage a citywide audit. There's some mapping tools. The one that I like best is Roll Mobility, where you can enter your own information about how accessible it was. You can bring Navi Lens to your city. There's a group called Recording Artists and Music Professionals with Disabilities, or RAMP, that can help you find a rock star in your community to help you have that cultural support, and connect with the ADA National Network for information. And if you do this, please contact me, because I do plan to publish in this area and create some academic knowledge around this topic and best practices for promoting disabled people's access to nightlife.
up as one of my students.